So I'm going to open the subcommittee work session on House Bill 1272. Hopefully the other member of the subcommittee will get here, and Director Courtney should be here at some point, but I think we can proceed. This is the bill on reciprocity, 1272. Yep. And, you know, as I'm reading it, it strikes out the language, the substantially similar as to, you know, which licenses will permit, you know, licensing by endorsement from. And as I recall, some of the stuff that was raised last time, other than, you know, we just passed that. We've just passed the reciprocity that's there now, and they're in the middle of rulemaking. And there were concerns about particular licenses, in particular, as I recall, realtors, land surveyors, and naturopaths, because naturopaths are very different here and in other states. They can do a lot more here. I spoke with Director Courtney. I mean, I'll let her speak for herself when she gets here, but my understanding is that, you know, because they have a very different scope of practice, they wouldn't be recognized as equivalent licenses anyway. And so there wouldn't be an option for, I don't know if you can speak to that, Doug, or someone can speak to that.
Just so everyone's aware, when I do that weird chair switch thing, I'm actually very hard of hearing in my right ear based on something that happened to me as a kid.
Okay.
So it's hard for me to hear out of my right ear. So that's not just some weird control thing.
Okay.
I'll have to remember that. I never heard that particular take before, so I may need it.
Yeah,
Very good
you don't want, it's not that you don't want anyone on your right.
No, it's a very good compensatory strategy
Yes.
that you're using as an audiologist in the past life, so.
Yeah, similarly, if I have trouble hearing, especially if there's background noise. So if someone's speaking to me, I'll often turn and put my ear towards their mouth. It's not that I'm ignoring you and turning away. It's I want to hear what you say. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess the question I have, the first one is around, the more general question is, you know, the bill talks about, you know, comparing the requirements to get a license. And, you know, what is the standard for that? How close should they be? But what I was wondering is, where is it defined, or how is it decided whether the scope of practice of the two licenses are close enough that you even get to the point of comparing other things? And is that in rules or what?
I think it's an interesting question. I think the language was designed to be a little bit flexible because we have 57 professional boards and 200 different types of licenses.
Right.
And I think the substantially similar piece is kind of a board by board question. We can go to them because we have to work in conjunction with the boards, and we're not cramming things through. So it's sort of, we let the subject matter experts inform.
Sure, I get that, but I guess my understanding, it may be that I'm off on this, is that the substantially similar is talking about it's the licensing requirements. So the licensing requirements have to be substantially similar. Now, that's kind of tied to scope of practice, you'd hope, because you'd hope the licensing requirements would, you know, make some sense with regard to what are you letting people do. But my understanding is that before you even get to comparing the licensing requirements, you have to say, is this an equivalent license, or we'd even think about that? And the question is, how is that determined? What goes into that?
That has been discussion with the boards as well. And so the conversations have been around mainly those requirements, but with other conversations around what other states currently have. So we're looking to see what are the license types or the titles Do they equal what we have here in New Hampshire? If they do not, for example, Maine has a sales agent license and an associate broker license. In New Hampshire, we have a salesperson license and an associate broker license. But in Maine, the associate broker is actually a New Hampshire salesperson. So there's been a lot of legal review through board council, discussion with the boards, the associations to say, what do these equal? What does this mean? So that way, when we then set those requirements, it's an education piece. So that's where we're using those subject matter experts and those stakeholder partnerships that we currently have.
Okay, and I assume, is there something similar going on with regard to scope of practice to compare, to see if the licenses, I'm assuming, you let me know, that they don't have to be identical, but presumably they have to be at least close enough that it makes sense. Is that how it's
That's
handled?
my understanding as well, before it's even getting to the board that the legal review is being done. So for example, like with naturopaths, there hasn't been a lot of movement forward with what the rules would be for the requirements around substantially similar, because we're not seeing a substantially similar scope of practice in other states for that. So there's some work that's being done prior to it even getting to that rulemaking process.
Okay, so again, let's see if my understanding is correct, that even though it doesn't quite say it in statute, you're basically expanding the substantially similar for licensing requirements to say you're also going to be looking for at least substantially similar on scope of practice types of issues.
And that, I believe, has been a business practice and operationally what we have been doing to do our due diligence, not based on, that.
Okay, I mean, I'm not
directive in-
objecting, that makes sense, but
Yeah.
that's not in statute or in rules? Is it in
Correct.
rules anywhere?
Not
The
that I have
process?
seen.
Okay,
I don't think it's explicitly stated, but it sort of has to be implicit that
Yeah.
if you're going to do reciprocity, it has to be kind of
Okay.
1-for-1 or at least close, maybe 1.1.
okay. I mean, looking through this, that question came up, it's like, how do you decide? So thank you for that. Representative Manchaputi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. But I have some clarification needing in this. When you say reciprocity, is there national standards for these professions with licensing that have a national standards and subset each state? And is there a way to compare, or the each title is so different that it's hard to compare?
I think you have to go profession by profession. Some professions do have national standards, others are state by state. And there's a website that we use. What is the website? I'm completely drawing a blank, but they have done, is it clear? Doesn't matter. There's a website that we use that does these comparisons. So they'll put the nursing up there and it'll just go state by state. This is what they require. This type of education, this many hours, whatever it may be. So there are resources available for us to not have to do on our own 49 states every time we want to do this.
Follow up?
Sorry.
Yep.
The other piece is, so although we're doing those comparisons, and I'm sorry, it's the West Virginia Research University something or other, but so we use them and CLEAR, which is our national regulatory membership agency, to assist with the comparison piece. The professions that have a national standard or best practice are typically those ones that we're involved in the compacts with or working towards building those compacts. And so that would be where that national process would come in. This part, when we're talking about reciprocity within the state, is where we are using those resources to compare state to state.
And if I could add to that, I mean, does those sources of information include scope of practice info on the licenses for the? Just one-
I don't know if we've been provided that information, but I do believe that those research facilities, agencies have looked at that, but I'm not sure how clear that is.
Because I was wondering
in the
where you get
process.
how you go about, do you actually have to look at the detailed scope of practice in every
Right.
state when you're looking at this? Yeah, okay, so, Representative?
Yeah, reciprocity is both two-way street, correct? I can tell you from my experience as a speech language pathologist, I started in Massachusetts and I had national American Speech and Hearing Association accreditation, then Massachusetts. And then when I moved to New Hampshire, I had to get all over again. And continuing both states licensing, I had to, New Hampshire did not take Massachusetts. I mean, it's neighboring, and I live in a border thing. So that kind of hurdle do you probably see in a lot of those. And that to me is a crux of the reciprocity for our neighboring states, enabling, right?
If I can make a comment, and then they can say whatever. I think calling this bill relative to occupational license reciprocity was unfortunate, because the issue I don't think is reciprocity, it's licensing by endorsement. I don't think, I know there's this feeling of fairness, but this is really, the benefit is not for the licensee. The benefit is to make more people available to provide resources and services to the people in New Hampshire while still doing it safely. And that doesn't require, requiring the other state recognize ours first does not contribute to that. So I think the idea of getting actual reciprocity in here, I think, is not appropriate, actually.
I agree with you, Mr. Chair. That was my point. Reciprocity is not you accept mine and I accept you. And it's like helping the workforce to straddle, especially in the border towns. And it was a pain to do two different paths when I was working. I would consult in Massachusetts, border town, but I had to, it was a different cycle. New Hampshire had their own thing, did not take any of the reciprocity. Whereas, Massachusetts, no problem.
Yeah.
So that is a big impediment. And the whole language, I tried to look through, there's really not much addressed in that way, Mr. Chair. That's my concern, is the key thing is reciprocity. And I think that is not that's not going to alleviate the problem of workforce shortage.
I mean, we could, if we decide to move forward with this bill, the subcommittee and then the full committee could consider changing the word reciprocity to licensing by endorsement or something to clarify that. But
It looks like.
Or
Yeah.
both.
Or-
But it is interesting to point out, because line 9, individuals seeking a license by endorsement.
Right.
It's not in the title, but it's in the language. And I think that's sort of where we're able to, through the PLC 313s, make those adjustments so that even if there isn't reciprocity, working with the boards, we can get those people licensed in the state.
Okay, so thank you for
Sure.
clarifying.
We are
So,
treating it as endorsement as well because of that.
because of the word endorsement in that
Yes.
language. Okay, that helps clarify. I couldn't figure out. Thank you.
Representative Schmidt, or did you have something?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think the colloquy that we've been engaged in up to this point has been helpful and useful in terms of understanding kind of where we're going and what our what our goals are. And I do agree with the chair's earlier remark that it's to make the situation better for the people of New Hampshire in providing services that they can't get because you got, musical chairs. People are being left out because we don't have enough people of our own to take care of the thing. And that is absolutely in the interest of the citizens of New Hampshire. And I want to add to that to my way of thinking, that one of the central aspects of licensing is the idea of protecting the public and not letting people loose on them that are untrained. I mean, the situation in Missouri, for example, as I understand it, is they ain't got licensing in Missouri. So how do they have any idea what people are bringing to the table before if it's all buyer beware? That's not the way New Hampshire has structured its whole situation for basically certainly the 20 years I've been here, but also I think that the structure that exists clearly has the same idea of protecting the public, and it's been that way for probably 100 years. So then it becomes a question of, as you said earlier, Doug, um, that you're going to have to go profession by profession, because there's some things where if it doesn't go exactly right, there's no problem. If you're dealing with somebody's health, people putting hands on somebody's body in some fashion for some service, then you got to be sure that you have the criminal background checks and all those things for protecting the public. So you have to do it profession by profession. And one final thing, and that is that a body is a body in Arizona or in New Hampshire. But an architect, for example, who's used to designing structures for Arizona may find some things different in New Hampshire from Arizona and vice versa. So then you have to go profession by profession. But and so I think we're heading in the right direction, and so it's more than just reciprocity. You recognize me, I recognize you. What is the profession, and what are the ramifications of that profession for providing the service safely and beneficially to our people here?
Okay,
Thank you.
Representative Brown had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So looking back through my notes from the first hearing, there was a lot of opposition to this. The New Hampshire Association of Realtors, the licensed electricians, they have reciprocity with 21 states, but they oppose this as written. Mechanical licensing, their Board of Accountancy, and a number of others. So, but because of that, I want to be really clear that I know what I'm doing here, and I will apologize to my much more knowledgeable fellow committee members, as this is new to me this year.
Don't
So,
worry. We were all new at some point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Would I be accurate in translating this into saying that licensing requirements include scope of practice? Are we defining that way? Licensing, if you want to get a license in New Hampshire, here's your requirements, and that would include scope of practice, or am I wrong?
I wouldn't say that's the case. I think the licensing requirements are more the training, the experience, the education, those types of things that you need to obtain licensure. And
Okay.
then once you have that license, the scope of practice sets the parameters on what you're able to do with that license.
Okay, all right.
Follow up?
Thank you for that follow-up. Yep. Although I'm not experienced in this, I did serve on the New Hampshire DES Board of Certification for wastewater treatment plant operators for a number of years. And the way that we compared a grade 6 from state X to a grade 4 in New Hampshire, not only was education and experience, but it was also scope of practice. So we had this conversation as a whole when we sat in committee, and that resolved that. Now, under rules, is that what OPLC is going to be doing? Or
I think that goes back to Representative Lakis's question earlier, sort of in that first instance when we do a license by license comparison. That would be where we would take a look at the scope of practice.
and one more follow-up.
Follow up.
And I'm not supposed to ask you of your opinion. Do
No
you feel
position.
that process answers some of the questions, some of the hesitation from the boards on this bill? I know that's a broad question, but
No, that's right. I'm not sure how much that question about scope of practice relates to the proposed language in this bill, because I think the proposed language in this bill is saying that there does not, if we remove the substantially similar requirements for licensing, it lends more towards what was said prior of you just need to have a license in this state to be able to come to New Hampshire. It doesn't matter what their requirements are, which also would affect how we operationalize that by looking at the scope of practice. And it would not necessarily require us to do that either.
That's actually useful and I hadn't thought about. So your take is that if we got rid of the substantially similar, it would remove or at least limit look into the relative scope of practice? I mean, I think they'd have to have some overlap. And I don't know if that's a question you can answer, but,
I don't know if it would. And I haven't thought about this, but my initial reaction is that if we're still, the requirement would still be if you're licensed in a state to do X and you're
Yeah.
trying to do X in this state,
okay.
we would still have to make that comparison in some
okay.
regard, right? So even if, regardless of this language, I think that comparison would still have to happen.
Okay. All right. And-
But
and
I
to-
don't,
right.
I don't know. I haven't thought about it long.
Okay, and just as not directly on this bill, but, you know, I don't know, it might make sense. It's more a comment on the rulemaking to actually put something in the rules about how you're deciding whether the two are even comparable and you're going to do this. But I don't have a strong feeling on it, but would have clarified things when I was looking at it. Representative Mangiapudi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another question. This is not excluding licensing in New Hampshire. You have to have licensing in Massachusetts, for example, and apply for licensing. It's just the reciprocity is what the, educational needs or continuing education, some of it, if we do it in one state, we don't have to do it again in another state to keep that continuity, right? So another follow-up.
Follow-up, yeah.
So in a border towns, it was brought to my attention that physicians who see patients from Massachusetts, there's no problem with insurance covering their visit to their physician's office in Nashua. They are coming from Massachusetts, but the physicians in New Hampshire cannot do telemedicine to their patients in Massachusetts because there is no reciprocity in their practice, which kind of makes it similar to what I faced as a speech language pathologist. Would this address some of it? Because Massachusetts takes national thing. New Hampshire does not participate in the Federal Registry of Federal Licensing for medical, not in this thing. So there's a lot of little gaps. So it's creating problem for people in border cities.
The way that I think, and Doug can follow up, but if this was to pass with this language, my understanding is you would still have that same issue if they didn't apply. This is still saying that they have to apply for licensure in New Hampshire. So even if you have your license in Massachusetts, you would still have to apply for that license
Right,
here in
but
New Hampshire.
It sounds
That's
like
correct.
this particular issue, isn't it? It's Mass actually that's preventing her from practicing. It's not New Hampshire.
Right.
So it would be a Mass thing.
Mass will say, yes, we can, they don't object if the insurance is willing to pay, but New Hampshire prohibits them from practicing
I'm
telemedicine
going this way.
going that way. So because there's, the standards here is higher or whatever it is, because we don't participate in the same federal registry.
And there are some conversations with many of our medical boards, medicine, mental health, psychology around telehealth. And so that may be a conversation on
Different.
the rulemaking around telehealth because there are some caveats to that.
Okay. Just to clarify my thought,
yeah.
Mr. Chair, is I'm very aware, I'm all for you have to be licensed in both states in order to practice. It's just that if one state's saying you're qualified, you can do it, why do I have to do the whole set again and New Hampshire? That's the biggest challenge I feel in New Hampshire. That is, to me, is the reciprocity.
Representative Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, coming back to you, if you're licensed in New Hampshire and you want to do telehealth in Mass, it can't be New Hampshire that's saying you can't do that. It has to be Massachusetts, right?
No, because you're licensed in your scope of practice in New Hampshire. You're seeing the patient from Massachusetts here. it's okay for you to see that in person. But
understood.
if the same patient is across the border, New Hampshire board
I
says,
would
no, you can't.
suggest taking this offline.
Thank you.
It's an interesting, but I think this is. I don't think it does. It would be an issue if there was a doctor that came up from Massachusetts to here, but this doesn't really deal with telehealth, which is why I suggest taking it. So kind of a question with the committee is, what do we want to do with this? I don't have a set view on that at this point. I mean, I certainly support
Can I
as
s-
much.
can I
yeah,
say
if
one
you have
more?
a comment, sure.
Can I have one more thing? That this is a fairly new bill as is, and the office was tasked with drafting rules. We have one set of interim rules in place, but we have a public hearing on the PLC 313s stemming from this statute on, I believe, March 7th. So we haven't even had an opportunity yet.
Right, I was actually just going to make that comment.
Okay, I just
Bring
wanted
that
to.
up, yeah, and so we got sent, I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at it, I skimmed through them. You know, there are proposed rules on reciprocity. You're not done with all the professions yet, is that correct? Or are they all covered? No.
Not yet. We're doing it rolling. So the rules we did propose, I think the interim rules had 12 or 15 of the boards covered, and then the new proposed rules have significantly more, but I don't have a number off the top of my head.
So given that, and I know there is some concern that it either, you know, there appears to be in the current law that was put in place last year, a lot of discretion to the executive director, and while we may believe that Director Courtney is going to do the right thing, you know, can't predict who's going to be there in the future. So that's part of, I think, the motivation behind this. However, you know, once it's in rules, it's got some inertia. So what I was wondering is, do we really need this now? You know, let the law from last year sort out, let them finish the rulemaking, and then if in the future there are problems or concerns saying, well, they're really too restrictive and we should, you know, there should be things that are replied by endorsement, that I see it. That you know, where we should be recognizing we're not. I mean, the legislature can step in and fix it at that point. So just thoughts on that. I'll get to you in a moment. But Representative Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been listening and and I came to the exact same conclusion, is that my question is, can't this be handled through rules? And so I really like what you're saying,
Yeah,
is
I mean-
that let's finish the rulemaking process that we're engaged in, hear what those rules are, and I'm ready to make a motion to ITL on this.
Okay, is there
To
a
recommend
second? Or
Yeah,
and then we'll have discussion. But,
yeah, so I agree. I think
So are
we
you
have to.
seconding the motion?
Correct. I
Okay.
can second the motion, and I think we can all agree, or at least in my mind, it's more clear. It's too premature to change everything all at once before knowing what the big changes, rulemaking hasn't happened this year, which came last year. And so you don't know what is affecting in a positive way, what's not affecting, before we get one clarity. That was a huge change from OPLC and the board, regulatory boards, to divide the responsibility.
And Reverend Stream, if you have something brief. We're just running a little late.
The point I wanted to make is Director Courtney is a significant player in all of this. Can we find out whether she's going to be here or not? But if we're moving in the direction of ITL already, then it's not so crucial. But otherwise, can we find out whether she's going to make it?
We can't commit her to.
No, but I'm just trying to find
I mean,
out.
I joked with her that that she's not permitted to either resign or die. But unfortunately, that's not enforceable.
If we're going in the direction of ITL anyway, then I think we're not in as much of a bind to have her here. So thank you.
Yeah. Any other discussion on the Representative Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will try to be brief.
Yep.
So we do have reciprocity now. Am I correct in saying that?
Licensing by
We have a
endorsement.
licensing by endorsement process that was, the statutory authority was given to the office after the last legislative session, and we've started developing rules with the boards and commissions as noted in the previous bill
Yeah.
with their consultation. So we have some rules that have been interim rules that have been adopted, and we have another public hearing coming up in March. So we are currently starting that process for
Okay.
the licensing by endorsement.
And follow up.
Follow up.
Is that eventually going to get to a point out through the rules where someone can say to OPLC, I have a license here in X state for this, and you automatically say, here's your license for that in New Hampshire without any conversation? That's reciprocity
Well,
to me,
actually,
right?
if I can, we were emailed the interim rules on reciprocity for the professions that they've already reviewed, and you can look through it. It is asking for more information than I would have expected, but we don't need to get into the details of commenting on the rulemaking, but it didn't look unreasonable. So, but if you want to look at the details, and my thing is this: if we ITL it, this is the end of the second year, and so we're not going to bind what's going to happen, the new legislature next year. So, if it turns out that the legislature or anybody, any member who wants to put a bill in, thinks that the rules are not appropriate or they're not being executed properly, they can put a bill like this or whatever in at that time to fix it. But yeah, Representative Montepudi and then Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the licensing by endorsement it was in last year's thing. So this is not necessary. This bill is not necessary for that process to be unfolded, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
You're
thank
asking
you.
them for an opinion, though, so you got to watch out.
I took the question to be clear as, do we need this to have that process
Right.
take place?
Right. Yeah, we have a bunch of new people on the committee. We slogged through all of this last year, and yeah, that was put in place last year.
But it was very clear, Mr. Chair, when they said
I-
that
I-
endorsement was, so that makes me feel good.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Representative Gould.
I was just going to say, hopefully, if there are representatives who are concerned about the outcome of the rules making, they attend some of the public hearings and give their input.
Okay, on the subcommittee, any further discussion, or can we move to a vote? Okay, so the motion is ITL on House Bill 1272. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that's 5-0. I'm closing the subcommittee work session on House Bill 1272, and I'm going to open the work session on House Bill 1410. And give me a moment to get organized here. Yeah. When do you have to leave? When do you have to leave here? All right, well, we'll try and, I'm hoping we can do that, although we'll see.
Yeah.
That's how much people want to talk and questions and all that, which I don't want to limit, but. Okay, so this,
May I ask a quick question?
certainly.
For OPLC, if you could come up with those two websites that you mentioned, I was trying to look up Clear and I couldn't find anything. Could you email those to us? That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, just trying to get this.
I will say, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to get the information. I think there are subscription types. Is that true? Yeah. So I'm not sure you'll be able to, but we can at least tell you what they are.
Thank you.
Okay, I sent out 2 emails to everybody. One was my notes on what we chose to do at the last meeting, and we went through most of the bill and actually took votes on what to do on all, a bunch of the sections. We were left with dealing with some of the section, the repeals in section 10, and we had asked Mr. Osterhout to provide some input on that, which he did, and then I sent an email out kind of hopefully making it clear and summarizing it. And I sent that email out. And so what I would suggest is we can go through that list. The email I sent out, if that's okay. And we can talk about the pieces and and then we can vote on pieces. And then, once we're done, I'll take everything we've decided on both days and go down to OPLC and dump it all on them to turn it into one amendment. Okay, so does everyone have, it was the email I sent out on the 29th at, I think it's 5:41 PM. What's that?
I don't have it with me, but I read.
Oh, okay. I can. And this is, mostly going to be, right, but that's the minutes, and we, I mean, if anyone, as I put in the email, if anyone thinks I made a mistake, please bring it up on that one. Yeah, the 29th one, which is where to go with the last part we didn't deal with then. And this is all, I believe, on pages 6 and a little bit on 7 of HB 1410. So. Well, that's, no. But we can kind of share this if you want, if you don't have it. I didn't print extra copies of this one. But. No, at this point. Yeah, I don't have, but I can talk it through if that works. Okay, so the first part is on section 10, page 6. It's lines 27 and 28. So, this one, actually, let me get a piece of paper so I can actually go like last time. I got them. I got a stack of them here in the back of one of these. Yeah, just one. Actually, it's this one because I knew I was going to have to do this. All right.
I just have one clarification
Certainly.
with that one.
Sure.
So that is, we are going to repeal medical technicians.
No, I was
That's
going.
going to keep, it said.
That
right?
we decided last time. Those lines are not medical. Oh, actually, hang on a minute. I'm saying, we already did that. That's in the minutes from the last meeting.
Yeah.
I said we were going to remove that from the bill, so we would leave the medical technicians in statute. I believe.
Okay,
it
so
is.
I wrote it as keep it, and then I wrote it as remove, so
Yeah,
my own
okay.
notes is confusing to me.
Yeah, let me, so that was lines 22, starting
To
at
24,
Right, and I think,
then we said remove from the repeal list 25 and 26, that's the radiology,
let me find out.
don't repeal it.
Yeah, I have removing 25 through 26, which is the medical imaging ones, right? And the
Yeah, radiology.
radiology.
Yeah.
So if you look at the email I sent on the 26th, second bullet from the bottom, it says page 10, section 10, page 6, lines 25 through 26, motion, remove these lines from the bill, keeping the licensing of medical and radiation therapy. Representative Gould made the motion, Bailey seconded, and, we had the vote and it passed. So we're going to leave that in there.
Okay, so
Stays in statute.
Correct.
that stays in statute.
Yeah, we had all this confusion. We're moving from the bill, statute, and all that. So
Yeah, so
that is what we decided, and that's
can
what
you
I'll,
just clarify for me,
Sure.
then the 1, 2, and 3,
this is from
same,
the 26th?
10,
Oh.
line 22, 23, 24, that will be repealed from the statute, the medical technician that we
yeah, let me
voted
go,
on.
so I'm speaking correctly. Not 22, that's different. That's medical technicians.
Yeah.
That's not the radiation and not the imaging people.
Correct. No, I'm
So-
clear with the imaging, which is
it's
25, 26 is fine. We are removing it from the repeal list.
right.
So it's staying in the
And we
statute.
looked at 22 and 23, I
And
believe.
24, all
Right.
3 are medical technicians.
I think we said we were gonna strike that
From the bill?
from the bill, because medical technicians.
No,
No.
I had this keep, that's going to be repealed.
Right, and actually, I may have made an error
That,
in my motion. Okay, no, this is, and it should be leave, I think, and you can correct me if your memory is different than, so, yeah.
With those,
What I sent in the email actually on the 26th, and that's third from the bottom, is actually an error. And if anyone disagrees, that's fine. That should have been, leave this section in the bill as is for lines 22 through 24. I made the motion, I wouldn't have, it was something different, and Representative Gould seconded, and it was unanimous.
oh, it was leave it, so okay.
I
That's-
made an
yeah.
error in my email of the 26th, and thank you for catching
Yeah,
that.
that is, we are leaving it.
Yeah, actually, it says remove these lines from the bill, but then it says in my email, eliminating the registration of medical technicians, which that doesn't,
Yeah,
it's
it
in
doesn't
conflict.
work.
So the first part was correct. Leave this section in the bill as is. But thank you for that. Okay,
So,
certainly.
On the medical technicians one, and I don't recall that we had this conversation, but I talked to Jackie about what we were doing, what we were looking at, and my question to OPLC is it important for us to keep the registry? As I recall, the issue was that she's getting complaints, there's no active board, there's a problem recruiting board members, there's no way to adjudicate the complaints if they don't rise to the level of a criminal proceedings. But do we want to keep a registry of known problems and remove the board, have it be an OPL function to have a registry?
I don't think it's necessary because, as the executive director Courtney testified, there aren't individuals who identify as this position. So it's either, it could be contractual, it could be covered under another board. There's other places this could be handled. I do think she made the suggestion if we decided to keep the registry, to give it to OPLC so that we could follow through with those hearings.
I mean, what I.
Thank you.
I mean, I think maybe what I discussed last time, what I would say is, what I'd suggest, and we can make a different decision, is to leave those in the bill, which would remove the registration. And then in a future bill, if somebody thinks that there really is a problem, work with OPLC to figure out, okay, what is the process that should go forward? Because the current one is completely dysfunctional and can't work because nobody identifies in that profession. Nobody wants to be on the board. They have one person on the board. The board has never met, and therefore they cannot act on anything. Right. And there's no interest, I guess, from what she told us, in anyone being on it. So it just doesn't work the way it's.
Yeah, that's no good.
Right. And
No
so,
question about it.
if later somebody can come up with a way that would work, then we, can be considered. And I don't want to try and solve that as part of amending this bill at this point.
My to clarification on that one is if we repeal the Board of Registration of Medical Technician and medical technician registration and all that relating to medical technician, is there a process then nobody's identifying as that, but they're working as a medical technician in the hospital or in the field? So who's overseeing that?
Could be the employer, and there's also, depending on the profession, it could be within the scope of practice of the individual.
One more follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Certainly.
So does that come under licensed nurse LNA or?
So if a med tech LNA violated some form of disciplinary rule, the Board of Nursing would have jurisdiction over that.
Okay, so this is not that.
But they wouldn't be, I mean, a med tech LNA is practicing as an LNA.
Correct.
With-
And not a medical technician, so they wouldn't be under this anyway. And just one other question, if you know. So Director Courtney said they had gotten some complaints, but she couldn't do anything unless it was clearly criminal, and then she could refer it to law enforcement. But who's making those complaints? What sort of people?
That's not something I can reveal. Those are confidential.
But can you even say, is
Well,
it
I
is it
can
a
also
patient?
say I don't know.
Is it
so
the employer?
I don't know.
I'm
I
not
don't
asking
know.
who.
Yeah. But I still don't. I don't know the information,
Okay.
even if I
No, what, sorry.
Yeah, Representative Gould.
could disclose.
Thank you. I recall specifically Director Courtney saying that she could not report some of these to the employer because if the board did not adjudicate
Right.
the report, then her hands were bound. So I don't think they're only coming from the employer, or even, there was
Right.
nothing indicating any of them were coming from the employer.
Right. I
Bottom
mean,
line is, what we talked about is we're talking about housekeeping people, those kind of scenarios where they had access to medicine. And I agree with you. If this is a problem going forward, then a clearer bill separate from this can come.
I saw you, but Representative Manchapudi and then Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if this is repealed, there's no board, there's no registration, the employer can take action. I can ask specifically the Exeter Hospital or Portsmouth Hospital, whichever. It was Exeter Hospital that was public. And if this was in place, the Exeter Hospital could deal with that right away.
Just let me get an answer.
We don't have control over how the employers would be dealing with their employee relationships. So, you know, how that partnership would be handled.
Yeah, but she asked if it could, and presumably they could.
So just removing this barrier with no place to go, like a dead end, in terms of complaints and who's going to look at it, does now OPLC feels like they have a tool to say, okay, they won't come to OPLC with complaint, the employer can deal with it with their own because there's no licensing or registration.
I don't think from the employer's perspective that this would be seen as a barrier. I think the problem here is this doesn't really provide much utility. I think whether this exists or not, the employer could take action against that employee.
And I mean, the bad behavior could be noticed, I suppose, either by a patient, the employer, practitioner at the employer, or whoever. And, if they're employed by the facility, hospital or whatever, in that case, a complaint could go to the hospital and they're going to deal with it however they deal with it. I mean, ultimately, if the patient thinks they're harmed, they can sue the hospital, and that gets into the whole medical insurance thing. But
Yeah, that was my point. Like, as long as we keep the public safety in mind, and this is going to provide a safer environment for Granite Staters in the field.
I think it's not going to make any difference. If, it's not working, so it's not really doing anything now. If we take it out, it's not going to make it, in my view at least, more dangerous or safer. And there might be another solution that might help public safety, but this apparently isn't. You're all set on that, or?
So I think it's just irrefutable that the statement you just made is the case. I mean, if it's not working, then no benefit is being achieved. I mean, but the bottom line is not whether the employer could have done something. The employer clearly could have done something, but because there was nothing in place, Mr. Kwiatkowski could come up from a series of other states where he was a bad actor, and he got to New Hampshire one jump ahead of the people arresting him in states X, Y, and Z, and probably ABC as well. They never would have hired him if they knew what his background was, but there was no basis there was no network, there was no registration. That was the reason. I was on the committee at the time that put together the bill in an attempt to give New Hampshire some kind of warning network, if you will, of people that had a history in other states. But if it's not working, then we got to go some other direction.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is get back to the mail of the 29th, which is the additional pieces of 1410 in section 10, if that's okay. So the first one is proposing to remove lines 27 and 28 on page 6. And these are just, we've done last year, maybe even prior, a general move of certain administrative functions from the boards to OPLC. And also there's some disciplinary, at least the the hearings and other parts of discipline, and that wasn't done in all boards, in all 57 boards. And so, as I understand it, the one on line 27 is relative to collection and expenditure of funds, but that's moved from the boards to OPLC, and related relative to fees and charges. So what this thing does is it removes the authority from the board. We've already given it to OPLC. Now it's in two places, which kind of doesn't work. So, if people are, when people, we can have discussion, but then I'd like to take just a quick vote on if people are fine with removing this.
Do you want a motion before we discuss
Sure,
it, or?
Yeah, why don't, you can do that.
Okay, so I make a motion to remove it,
Okay,
and I,
I'll second it, so we can
Okay.
get through this.
If we want to remove the conflicting language, we want to keep this language in the bill because this is
Remove
repeal-
what it says here is remove these lines from the bill. That's the motion.
no, it's,
retain the language.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, oh.
It sounds like you may.
Oh,
have
no, I've got this.
got that back.
yeah,
thank
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Oh,
that's,
It's okay, Mr.
I'm messed up here, and I'm burned out.
keep the language
Keep
so
these
that it's
lines.
not,
All right.
it's going to be repealed.
Thank you for keeping me
Yeah,
not too confused.
yeah.
Oh,
Keep,
Don't you have a staff?
so,
yeah, it's me.
Mr. Chair, if I can clarify.
Yes.
By keeping it in section 10,
Yes.
it's going to be repealed,
Correct.
which means the language will be removed in the statute, so the redundancy is gone.
You are absolutely correct.
Okay,
And while I understood that, I put the wrong thing down.
okay.
My apologies.
Does a negative and a negative make a positive?
Not in this case, I guess.
All right. So
I have a question for OPLC,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So, when Director Courtney was talking about with the LNA licensing, if we can get the funds from DHHS for licensing, and if the double charging will end, will this help in that case?
This is kind of an unrelated matter. This is more just removing conflicting language.
Okay,
Yeah, we're
so
clean-
it has nothing to do with
we're,
it.
Not really.
we're telling them to do two different things, and we're cleaning that up.
Okay,
I hope.
sounds,
Okay. So the motion is to keep these lines in the bill, which would repeal those two sections of statute, and we have a motion and a second.
nodding yes.
Yeah, okay. Everybody in favor? Yes. Anyone opposed? No. Okay, fine. We're done with that one. The next one actually is something that was brought to us by Mr. Osterhaus. He's suggesting we amend RSA, it's 326B:16(1). And it's a similar thing. What? No, it's the 16, sorry. It says, and the current language is submit a completed application and fees. And this is,
It's just more cleanup because I think
right, and we're adding as established by the board, which is the language used.
we're taking out the language established by
Right,
the board.
right, we're removing it.
So my suggestion was what are we talking about? B16 is
Yeah.
to take out that repeal, but amend section 1 of that language just so that it's clear OPLC has fee setting authority.
Going
No.
back- No, this is, no, this is adding something new. This is adding something new.
So,
correct.
so
But that adding, submit a completed application.
So
As
my suggestion is remove line 29 from the bill,
Which I believe.
but
I
then
hope-
amend section 1 of 326B16 just to remove conflicting fee setting authority language.
And I did not. No,
It's in the language I sent to Representative Lake. It's-
Right, but I'm trying to see if I put it in my notes. Okay,
You did
Okay.
do that, Mr. Chair. You said substitute, submit, you did
no.
add in the word,
okay,
add to the bill a section to amend RSA 326-B:16 comma 1 as follows. So you did put this
Okay.
language to be substituted.
So this would be to replace line 29.
Correct.
Is that, or 20, is it?
29.
No, right.
But my question is, in the
Is it line, just a moment. Is it, okay, 29.
No.
What was the question? Sorry?
if we're suggesting that we add language,
Lindsay just walked in the door when you
Oh, great. Thank you. Yep. Thank you.
trying to have a conversation with the chair and some-
All right. So, yeah.
we got a wonderful suggestion to add some language to
Microphone.
an amendment.
Microphone, yeah. Thank you.
We got some wonderful language to add. Oh, Lord, this is so hard. My husband's right. Why do we not all run out of the room screaming? All right. We got a wonderful recommendation to add some language to this bill on B16 semicolon 1, if my memory serves me correct. My question is, other than line 29 on page 6, is there anywhere in the other 5 pages of this bill we're looking at where the language is already there? And if not, where do we add that language into this bill?
So RSA 326B16 wouldn't have appeared anywhere else in,
Wouldn't have.
it would not have.
Okay.
So I do think it's interesting, right? Because right now section 10 is repeal.
Exactly.
Straight. So
Exactly.
so my suggestion would be remove line 29 from section 10 and then probably create a new section where we
Okay.
could do that amendment.
Thank you.
Okay. And in the email, I had the add a section to change that line. What I had left off was removing line 29. And
Okay.
I've added that in my notes, and that it would be part of the motion. So I'll make the motion. Somebody can second. Okay. And and if there's no more discussion, the question is, do we remove line 29, which repeals 326B16, and instead add a section that's going to amend it to remove the language as established by the board? If that's what you want to remove that? Yeah, okay.
So we don't need to add that. We just have to remove it from this line. And
Well, we remove line 29, which is the repeal of the whole section.
correct,
And then we add an amendment to the section to take out
correct.
the word.
So I'm saying you're going to add another section out of, to the bill,
be
so we
elsewhere.
don't have to deal with
Right,
that in
right.
this
Wherever
section.
OPLC, I mean, wherever OLS puts it in there, but
Correct.
not in this section.
Correct. So all we have to do right now is to remove it from repeal line, which is,
Well, we're voting to do two things.
Yep.
One is to remove line 29 and also to add the section that changes the language.
May I, Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
not in this section.
No, that's what we're going to do right now. But yeah, it'll be added to the bill. Yeah, Representative
We're
Brown.
doing two things in one motion,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, which we can do.
Mr. Osterhaus, would you repeat what you wanted for my notes for myself, because I'm apparently slow here?
No, that's fine.
What
No.
you wanted to change in 326B16?
So I would remove line 29 from the bill,
Got
and
that.
then the language I proposed has fee setting authority with the board. So I just suggested removing the from the board piece so that it doesn't conflict with RSA 310. So that would fall right in line with what we've been doing in this bill. all
The
along.
issue is currently it says submit a completed application, fees as established by the board, but we removed the authority to set fees from all the boards and gave it to OPLC.
Correct.
Yep.
So this is in conflict.
Oh,
Yeah, the second
Yeah,
part.
it's the second part is going to be added to this bill in a different section.
Correct. Correct.
All right.
So all in favor? Anyone opposed? No, okay. Well, actually, it's 4-0. Because Bailey's not here. All right, thank you.
Do we need to add a section now or not?
No, we voted to do it.
Okay,
So what I'm going to do, I'll take this down to OLS, and they'll draft an amendment, and they'll add it wherever they think appropriate. I'm glad to leave that to them. And they also handle things like, if we say remove these lines, they handle the renumbering of the subsequent lines and all that. We don't have to tell them to do that. All right.
Theoretically.
I will not say there haven't been errors made, but that's supposed to be their job. Okay, the next one is, on page 6, line 30, remove this line from the bill because we chose to keep the license of LNAs, and this is removing something related to licensing, handling LNA applications.
Can we combine the two,
We could-
30 and 31? Both are nice, removing it from the repeal line.
I would ask that we do, I mean, I could have done this differently,
Okay.
but I kind of went through his things in order, and I'm confused enough as it is. So, yeah, maybe we'll do extra motions, but
So
Yeah.
wasn't, excuse me, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
So wasn't this because we eliminated section 1 from the bill?
correct.
Right, thank you.
Exactly right.
Line 30.
Okay.
on page 6.
And,
Second.
yeah, second. All in favor? Anyone opposed? No, okay, that's fine. We got that. Okay, next.
Remove line 31.
I have, right,
Because we decided to keep the licensure
Yeah.
for LNA. So we have to remove it from being
you
repealed.
are absolutely correct, I believe, and tell me if,
That sounds
check
right.
on us.
That sounds right.
Actually, no.
No, I think we
No,
want to
here's the
keep
issue,
that.
and that's the notes I
the
put in the
bill.
email. I want to leave it in the bill and keep the
Yeah.
repeal because the licensure by endorsement, license renewal, and license reinstatement process for all boards has been moved to OPLC. So this repeal needs to remain in the bill even though we are keeping LNA licensing. Well, because we moved the authority, now it's another case where we leave the authority in two places in statute, which is not great.
We're all okay with that.
Does anyone have,
So,
I move that we remove line 31 from the bill.
no, it's
Well,
the
keep it.
contrary. Keep the
Keep
bill,
the line in the
keep the line in,
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
leave these in the bill. Right,
Leave
that's,
it,
the motion is
yeah.
leave these in the
Keep.
bill.
I got
Yeah,
my backup.
leave line 31 in the
So
bill.
we don't have to do anything then. We
Yeah.
don't have to have a motion because if you're
Well-
going to leave it,
Right.
we don't have to.
Technically, that's true,
You're
but this
correct.
is so confusing.
So,
Unless we voted on it.
I mean, just, yeah, to make it clear on here, I mean, anyone opposed to doing this? We don't have to be formal, okay.
Keeping it.
Anyone opposed to leaving these in the bill?
No.
Keeping them, okay, great. Yeah, I mean, some of these, yeah. Okay, now we're dealing with 34 through 35. And this is, I want to remove these lines from the bill because these deal with the licensing, temporary licensing and continuing ed for nursing assistants. We need to pull the repeals out because we chose to keep license for LNAs.
I have a question about
Certainly.
that. This might be to the OPLC.
Yeah,
So this is in response to, this question is to OPLC. If you, the line 34, 35, 36, 37, this rulemaking is being implemented from last.
we're just dealing with 34 and 35 at the moment. And because 36 is going to be different.
Okay. So we are not repealing it because the shift in licensing process has been moved to OPLC for even LNAs, correct?
Because we deleted section.
Well, no, it's more an issue that we don't want to repeal the language for temporary licenses for LNAs or for continuing education requirements for LNAs because we're keeping LNAs licensed.
Correct. But what the authority or the due responsibility was moved to OPLC for licensing purposes from last, which rulemaking is happening right now. Am I correct?
Correct. We have but what these statutes did was say that a nurse a licensed LNA could start practicing pending the outcome of the criminal background check. So it got people working faster. So
If
So
we-
that was my
if we-
question.
Yeah, if we repeal this, then people who can practice now, we get rid of temporary licenses for LNAs. which we don't want to do.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, so it's reduced the amount of time that's needed to get licensing for LNAs, and they can start practicing right now.
Or to leave it the same, actually, because we're taking the lines from the bill. We'll leave it the way it is now, which is they can get the temporary license and practice sooner,
Okay,
I think. Yeah.
okay. As
Mr.
long as the
Chair.
workforce is available, that's
Mr.
my,
Chair. And what we talked about is that the LNA question is going to be dealt with by another bill. So we're just taking everything out of that
Any
here.
changes to
Any
it,
changes will happen elsewhere. We're not worried about that in this bill.
or Director Courtney thought she might be able to do something by rule, whatever.
no, I understand, but we decided to keep the licensing for LNAs. That was, the intent was to take away that and make it even easier, but it was last discussion with the background check and all that. We needed to make sure that we're keeping LNA licensing and reduce the dual channel registry and combine it.
Follow up, Mr.
Certainly.
So we decided at the last one we're not doing anything in this bill with LNAs. So any discussion about the LNAs other than to take out repeals from this bill just confuses the issue. Anything that is going to change the status quo will be handled in the future. Jackie's working on that. So we can trust Jackie and we can just let that go and remove any of the language of the LNAs from this bill.
Right. Or if you have an interest, talk to her and get involved in that process.
Exactly.
That's fine.
Excuse me.
Yeah, certainly. I'll work around.
For the people out that, Jackie would be Representative Grota.
Thank
For
you.
those out there.
Yeah, we're. Right.
Sorry,
I want to
thank
keep
you.
it, move things along, be a little informal, but not too much, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree.
okay.
I did have conversation with Representative Grota, and
Motion on this. Cool, okay.
I move to
I'll
remove
second it.
lines 34 and 35.
From the bill.
Second.
Okay. And all in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, good. Next, let me look this over again to make sure I didn't make a mistake. Relative to injunctive relief. Now, this was one that we want to keep, or was there an issue? I'm trying to remember my notes on this. I think I've got the original email. Oh, here we go. 36. Keep in the bill, remove, and actually I had that wrong in my notes. But, actually, wait a minute.
you have both 36 and 37 no, 36
I have the notes
leave.
as different, and they may or may not be, so let's deal with them. I thought I got this straight, but apparently I didn't. So this is line 36, which is the injunctive relief thing. B40 is keep in the bill because we still want the language, the injunctive relief language around LNAs if we're licensing them. I think that your email said keep in the bill, remove from statute.
Keep in the bill, remove from statute. The disciplinary stuff is
Because that moved
covered
to
in
LPL.
310.
Right, this is another one where the responsibility moved from the board to
OPLC.
OPLC.
So by
as far as remedy.
by repealing it, we are keeping it in this.
Well, it's
No,
an
we're
issue where,
removing it from
it's
the
an
statute.
issue again where we have the board, we gave the board authority and OPL authority for the same thing, which is not good. If that's
Correct.
correct, okay,
So let me.
Mr. Chair, would you accept a motion?
sure.
I move that we leave lines 36
Well, I'm just
and
doing
37
36 at the moment.
and 37.
30
They're
no.
both about
No, 37 is a different. It's going to go the other way. We can talk about that separate. Just 36.
36 from the bill.
Okay. And I'll second it. All right. Any,
Just
and
one more
just make sure people are
clarification.
clear.
This double negative is driving me nuts.
So we'll leave this in the bill, which will repeal the
The language.
language, giving the board certain authority because OPLC has it.
So the statute will change because it's repealed.
Yep.
And the new statute will cover what is needed because OPLC has the,
Right. This is just repealing redundant language in statute. The board
Okay,
wouldn't even lose
thank
the
you.
authority to
thank you
grant
for
an
clarifying.
injunction.
Anyone opposed to this?
What is it we're doing again?
Okay, we're gonna leave line 36. Page, I know, no worries. Page 6, line
We're
36.
removing it.
No,
We're not removing
we're
it.
not removing it. We're gonna leave it in the bill, which will repeal it from statute.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm not the only one.
No, I've had issues with this too. We haven't had this, we've gotten the lawyer mindset maybe, which would help us with this. I don't know. Okay. The next one are, and we only have 2 more bits here. And I apologize for running a little bit late to everybody. But this is page 6, line 37, through page 7, line 1, the first on the top. And what I'm looking to do is remove these from the bill because these have to do with if someone's done something wrong, I guess, the authority for the initial part of looking into these problems, investigating stuff, moved to OPLC, but this language left it in the board and with OPLC. Is that a reasonable way of putting it?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about we refer to them as charging statutes. That's kind of if you've done something wrong, that's a place where it's probably okay to have it both in the OPLC and the board statutes. So if there exists language that says this is a violation and you can be held
But
accountable.
this also deals with the
keep
penalty,
that.
which,
Yeah,
I mean, your recommendation, your email was to remove these lines from the bill.
correct. And
You stick with that.
yeah, I'm sticking with that.
So the repeal, don't repeal it is basically.
Don't
what you're
repeal the
Right.
language from
saying. So
statutes.
remove it from the repeal line,
Correct.
Correct.
repeal section.
Mr. Chair, would you like a motion?
Please.
I move that we retain lines,
Remove them from the bill, which would retain them in statute.
remove line item 37 and 38 from
Well,
the
no,
bill.
37 through
Oh.
page 7, line 1.
Page 7, line 1, thank you.
They're 2 adjacent, but we have a
I
page
know,
break.
I know. I had to switch the page in my brain.
Okay, that's Brown seconds. All in favor? Anyone opposed? No, okay. I don't want to railroad and vote for everybody. And make assumptions, which are dangerous. So, okay, last one.
Get that in writing.
Yeah. Okay, now we're on to page 7, line 2, which is the last one of this section. And this one is, we want to leave this in the bill. This is the grandfathering statute for, grandfathering in LNAs that were licensed in other ways. Since we're keeping LNA licensing, we should remove this from the bill so that it will remain in statute. I got that right?
Makes sense. So I make a motion to remove,
To leave it in the bill. To leave the line in the bill,
so we are going to repeal it.
correct. Oh,
But
no,
it's sti-
no, actually, no, I've got
We
this
have to
backwards.
leave it-
You're
that's what I'm
absolutely right.
saying.
You're absolutely right.
Thank you.
And, yeah, that's another one I
I
got
think finally I
confused on.
got it right.
No, I'm not. Okay, so you're gonna- there's a reason why we're all doing this together, and I
Yes.
ask people to review it.
We leave it, no.
We remove it from the bill.
Yeah, remove it from the way my brain works is remove it from the repeal line, so that
Correct.
stays in the statute.
Okay.
Okay?
So we have that motion. Somebody want a second? Brown, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay. So I will
Yeah.
take this to Olaf, and we'll have an amendment. And when I get the amendment, I will send it out to everybody. and please take a look at it. To make sure I didn't, I'll be very careful, but, all right.
In order for me to take a look for it, then just let me clarify. For line 37
Whoops, let me go back
on
to,
page 6 and line 1 on page 7.
hang on, let me get to it. 37
Removing those from the
bill.
Right.
We're removing, please. We're removing them from.
Actually, is that right?
Yes.
From the repeal.
Right,
Removing
So
them
that
from
they
the bill.
stay in statute.
So they stay in statute. Okay.
right. No, that's good. Double check.
I'm reinforcing my thought.
Double check is good. All right, so I am going to close the subcommittee work session on House Bill 1410, and as soon as I get my things organized here, actually, I'll open it on the work session on House Bill 1676. But it'll just, yeah, but just give me a moment here to change gears. No, you're not on this one. No. This last one, having some extra eyes on it wasn't a bad thing. Okay. Yes. Let's see, that's membership, statement of purpose. Okay. So, it was a lively hearing, and I can't speak for anyone else. So my take is there were three main objections. The big one was that people perceive the repeals in the bill as a threat to, whatever board they think is important.
Chair, my apologies. Which bill number again?
I'm sorry, 1676, that's the sunset one. I'll wait till people get it if you want. Yeah. 1410. Membership. We want. That's all right. I'm going to hand something around. I'm going to read this out for the people here, but yeah. You can look at this and then, no, this is something extra. I want to and hand it down to people. Okay. So there was a concern about the repeals, which I think I'm going to get to last. There's a concern about the membership, which I completely agree with. And there was concern about the stated purpose in the bill. And I'd like to deal with that one first. And what I'd like to do here is deal with those issues, and then if anybody has any other, on the subcommittee has any other issues with the bill they want to bring up, we can deal with them and then move on from there. So the statement of purpose I can see as some of it's, I think, boilerplate that we're putting in all these bills, maybe not appropriately in all cases. And so the language, the first sentence I kept, the protection of health and safety is of utmost importance to New Hampshire state government and consumers of the state. Fine. Now it says here, you look at the existing language, but it says overregulation is a barrier, can prevent, and the purpose is, but it states the purpose of this act is to require legislature to re-examine the licensing boards of the state to determine if it is in the best interest of the consumers and the health and safety of the state to renew their authority. So that doesn't really go along with the rest of the bill because it's putting it out there like there's two options. One is we keep things the way they are, or we just get rid of them. Right. And that is not the intent. And so I'm going to read what I passed around, but you can look at it as well.
I have one copy left.
yeah, you can give it to Peter or someone out there if they want it or whatever, but I'll read it. So the first sentence is the same. The protection of health and safety is of utmost importance to New Hampshire state government and the consumers of the state. And then it says, at the same time, the general court recognizes the right of an individual to pursue a lawful occupation is a fundamental right. And then lastly, the purpose of this act is to require the legislature to re-examine the licensing boards of this state to determine if the balance of those two important interests is being done properly and to suggest any improvements. So that's not presuming what the outcome of this is going to be.
Correct.
And it's not saying there's only two options, all or nothing,
Correct.
and lays out the general issues. Yep.
I think you started out on the right note by saying when I saw the bill and said sunset, swipe, clean everything, wipe everything off the board, and we don't need. That's a threat to the public safety to begin with.
Right.
So,
Now, if you read even the original bill, you know, the body of the bill was that the commission's supposed to, you know, it's got all the things they're supposed to look at and all the options they can take. One is to leave it alone. One is to get rid of it. I would be very surprised if such a commission would actually eliminate all regulation
Yeah.
of any kind for the professions, and that wasn't the intent. But I understand why it was perceived that way, and we'll get to the repeal issue. I've got suggestions for that. But at the moment, I'd like to just see if people are happy with this change to the purpose.
sorry.
I will in a moment. No, you continue, and then we'll get to.
Okay. That makes me really so much more comfortable because I came in this morning thinking there's no way we can get rid of medical board starting from next
that's
year,
not-
sunset everything. I mean,
That was
this is
never the-
total.
never the intent.
Yeah. So I think, and this is a huge task, just like this body, this committee did last year, shifting the OPLC responsibility to
Correct.
OPLC. That was a major overhaul that took this committee a lot. I was not on it,
Right.
but I can see this cannot be done in a haste.
Correct.
And this would jeopardize the safety and integrity of our
Right.
licensing
I mean,
system.
Mike, and you get the and how to deal with repeals. There's some other stuff there to help with that. So, you know, the part of the reason it was spread out is a concern that if the commission had too much dumped on it too quickly, the easiest thing to deal with it is just say leave everything alone and not really take a good enough look to see if there are changes needed. I don't want that, and I didn't expect they were going to say, well, we'll just get rid of it. I mean, that's and what we did last year was more looking at the overall structure of licensing and the relationship between the boards and OPLC, and we did some stuff, I hope, to make that better. This is having the commission look at individual boards and what's going on there. I mean, they could make recommendations for the overall structure, but it's more to look at, you know, each profession and is what we're doing making the best balance possible between public health and safety and, you know, people's right to work and for the consumer's right to have people to do the service. Yes.
Yeah. So in that regard, don't you think it would be prudent on this committee's part to say major changes happened last year? The rule, it hasn't been implemented. OPLC hasn't taken over, or the boards haven't had a chance to readjust to the new regulations or new roles and responsibility. Instead of trying and saying which one will go, which one, you know, let's put this in a interim study and let's say, okay, this will happen. So the next term, it will have at least you would have had the rulemaking happen with major overhaul from last term.
What I'd like
That's
to
my
do, yeah, I would oppose that, but not that it's completely up to me, but what I'm asking, if we can go through and deal with these three issues and see and we might still say, because of that issue you raised, we don't want to pass this bill now. That's fine, or for other reasons, whatever reason. But I'd like to go through three pieces and see, if we feel this would make, be an improvement to the bill if we chose to pass it. And then we can address the overall recommendation to the committee, if that's okay. So
Mr. Chair, do you want a motion on this
I
or
would-
just an agreement?
a motion on this that the committee would like to see the statement of purpose changed in this way.
Okay, I move,
Actually, Representative Schmidt, you got a
I do have.
brief, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think you're moving in the right direction generally, but I think there are some aspects that need to be addressed. So the first sentence, I think, needs to be changed to say the citizens of this state, not the consumers, because you can be somebody who's not a consumer, but you're going like, this is just wrong. So I think you should say citizens.
Well, if I can comment briefly just on that one, just because somebody doesn't like it and they say it's just wrong, I don't know that
Well,
that's legit. Now you could argue that, somebody practicing profession doing something wrong could have a health and safety impact on somebody other than the consumer. So I'm actually fine with changing that word.
Right. I accept your offer.
Yeah.
So consumers out, citizens in.
Yep.
Secondly,
to that point,
well,
statement gets made is gone.
yeah,
I don't know what the process.
I know we could go through it
Okay.
sentence by sentence,
the second sentence
Well,
says,
let's skip that.
recognizes the right of an individual to pursue a lawful occupation. I think that's also questionable because some people could not legitimately pursue a lawful occupation because they have a criminal background that would, I mean, somebody who's guilty of, has been convicted of assault should not be permitted to practice a profession
agree- I
where
agree
they
that's too.
going to put hands on other people.
Well, what I think this is trying to do is say,
I know where you're coming from. I just think to say the right of an individual it is absolutely in question, depending on what that individual's past history is.
there are limitations on almost all rights. So I'd like Director Courtney or somebody from OPLC. I recall, and before we did all this stuff last year, there was somewhere in statute, and I don't know if it's still there, that actually basically made this statement that people had the right. And if you know where that is.
Yes, it was in 332G, was it 12? I believe it was repealed as part of an amendment. However, obviously you've put that amended language back in this bill. I've always questioned though what that actually means, because when we talk about fundamental rights, we're thinking about constitutional rights, and you can't create a constitutional right in statute. I think, so the fundamental right language is a term of art constitutionally. That said, I think it definitely demonstrates that the legislature's intent, which is that the right to pursue an occupation is an important interest.
I mean, would you feel more comfortable if the word fundamental were removed? I'll ask you, and then.
I'm not uncomfortable with the language generally. I just think that the fundamental right speaks usually to substantive rights established by the Constitution.
And that's why I was trying to deal
Yeah.
with that issue by taking the word out.
Yeah, I think you would eliminate that confusion.
Grammatically, that would be strange if you just took that word out, I think.
No, I would say, and right to pursue a lawful is a right.
Yeah.
And that's not grammatical, I don't,
Mr. Chair, I have a fundamental question.
certainly.
Sorry.
All right, fundamental.
I have a fundamental question. So when you say individual to pursue a lawful occupation is a right, is that referring to not having licensing, not having any structure, I'm seeing it as just like my First Amendment right or Second Amendment right. I don't need to be told how to practice my profession. Am I totally off, or is my reading anywhere in the
I mean,
area?
I can answer then if somebody else has something, but if you look at any of the rights, even the ones that are in the Constitution, there's always, you have a right, but there is, it can be restricted if, to protect things like public health and safety. You need to exercise the right in a responsible manner. I mean, if my only experience is a car mechanic and I want to practice brain surgery, clearly, do I have a right to? In a sense, you do, but that right can be limited. Everybody has that general right, but the right can be limited if what you're going to do is going to threaten public health and safety. So what I'm trying to do here is say, protecting public health and safety is very important. People have, in general, a right to practice their profession. And what I'm looking for the commission to do is to look at how we're balancing those two, right? Are we protecting public health and safety, well enough, while still, intruding on that right as little as necessary? Okay, and that's done with almost any right. I can't think offhand of one, maybe there's one, but one where that's not the case.
I get your point, but practicing a profession is much more responsible, higher responsibility on the practicing person's shoulder. So I might be a great veterinary brain surgeon. Can I just say, oh, I'm so good at brain surgery, I'm going to go do it on humans? So, what difference does it make? So that kind of, we are in the general area. So the way I'm looking at this in a context of these commissions, the licensing, why do we have these things? To protect the general public,
Which is why that
which is the first line. In the second line, when you say practicing a professional is a fundamental right, I think it contradicts to some extent. So I could say, hey, I'm not allowed to practice speech pathology on animals, whatever.
Right, and I'd be okay taking fundamental out because it has some, it's a term of art in law, which I could see be an issue. But I will in a moment, but actually after Rep Brown, but sorry. And I don't want to go in circles, but, anytime you're looking at, it's up to the legislature to do this balancing, which has been going on. And all we're saying is take a look at how it's being done now. And is it being done in the best way, right? Is it both protecting the public and impinging on people's right to work how they want the least? And, I would guess that having a veterinary surgeon doing brain surgery on people is the commission and the legislature determined that that's not adequately protecting public health and safety. I would be amazed and shocked if they said otherwise and wonder what was going on. But
so with that, the whole language of the bill establishing a sunset commission,
well, we'll get to the
various
sunset part.
occupation boards. I mean, this is what we did with the other one, reciprocity, because the language of the bill didn't express what was really the intent of the bill, right? We ITL'd that.
I don't know about, I mean, I think the intent there was we want as much licensing by endorsement as possible, but it's got to make sense. And we gave the authority to OPLC to determine that through rulemaking, and they're in the middle of doing it. And I've actually reviewed it, and it looks reasonable. I haven't looked at it in great detail. Hopefully there's a lot of people, I'm sure they are looking at it. But if in the end, like any other rule, the legislature decides they didn't make the right call, the legislature has the right and the ability to impose a change. But I agree that that one, you know, because they're in the middle of actually implementing what we told them to implement, to let it play out. This is more dealing with the individual boards, and what we did last time was much less, you know, changing what the licensing is than more the administrative structure within the whole department. Sir, yeah, well, one more and then I gotta let other people, yeah.
So just like we did with the previous bill, where the medical technician, it didn't make sense, it didn't exist, we pulled it out, right?
Yeah.
So that was, and then we left LNA, which is great. So that's what that's what the legislature does. In this case, I think it's a sweeping, whopping change that the legislation, this particular bill is saying, change the fundamentally what we are trying to do. That's how I'm seeing it.
Okay,
So
I can kind of see that. I'll just respond quickly and then Brown, Gould, and Schmidt. It is requiring a review of all of the boards that are listed in there. So in that sense, it's sweeping. But the idea is, and what they're told to do, commissions just look at each one individually. I mean, they could do them in parallel, however the commission decides to go, but to take a look at the details of each one. And in my change to the statement of purpose, the original one seemed to imply an assumption that either we're going to leave it the way it is or get rid of it, which was not, the rest of the bill doesn't say that. And so the statement of purpose was not appropriate for the bill, and it wasn't the intended purpose. So my intent here is to say the job of the commission is to take these two competing interests. Clearly, there's an interest in protecting public health and safety. And there's an interest in, you know, people do have the right to pursue their profession unless there's a reasonable government interest in interfering. I mean, if the boards went or OPLC went too far in limiting it, you know, people could sue on that. And if it's, you know, unreasonable what they're doing, they would probably win. This is saying, look at it now and say, does the legislature think in each case, we're striking that balance right, and we're doing it in an efficient way, in a way that protects public health and safety while interfering with people working as, you know, no more than necessary. My intent was the statement of purpose that I revised one is intended to do this. So Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I appreciate what you did here, rewriting the statement of purpose. But every bill we have that has a statement of purpose, I always read it because somewhere down the road, 10 years down the road, someone's going to say, why did you do this? And that's kind of what that statement of purpose is meant to say. Why did we follow this path? So I like that you're trying to make it more sensible, I think. So without upsetting anyone in the gallery or creating an individual opinion here, I will say that on line 3 in the original, at the same time, the general court recognizes that overregulation is a barrier to obtaining a license. It may be that the governor's office feels that's the case, and maybe that's the impetus to some of this. I'm not speaking for the governor's office, but there are certainly a number of certain representatives with a political persuasion that would agree with that statement. That if you're overregulating people, it's too hard for them to get a license. Now, could we add to your language, and you may disagree, and just give me one more 30 seconds here.
Sure, no.
So, to your sentence where you say, at the same time, the court recognizes the right of an individual to pursue a lawful occupation, could we add something to the effect without burdensome regulation or something of that nature? Because that intent is coming from somewhere, and I think that there is some support for that conversation in the legislature.
I recognize that. What I tried to do is, which is sort of statement of purposes should be relatively, it's Representative Gould and then you, tend to be, they should be, I think, fairly general. And the issue around overregulation, it's open to interpretation. It's kind of true by definition, overregulation is a barrier.
Sure.
But it's a matter of, this doesn't make any decision as to what is overregulation, what isn't. That's the commission and then the legislature. But I think what you're looking for is kind of included in the last sentence. The purpose of the act is to require the legislature to re-examine the licensing board to determine if the balance of those important interests is to be done properly and suggest any improvements. Because, if the commission thinks there's overregulation, then they presumably think the balance isn't being made appropriately, and they would offer some suggestions for legislation to fix that, to make a change. So you're not wrong, but I'm resisting trying to add more stuff in here on specifics. I don't think it's helpful.
Thank you. I'm okay with that. I just wanted to make sure we talked about it. That's all.
Representative
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I really, like I started out with, like the change in this away from the language that we had, that the bill came to us with. And in talking with some of the folks who testified last time after the hearing, this totally changes the flavor, which is what they were looking for, was that we not start out with the attitude of we're going to eliminate. Some of the conversation I've been listening to right now has sounded a little partisan, and I really hope we can stay out of the partisan nature of this and all have a head toward what's going to serve our citizens who are also consumers. And by the way, on that word, the thing earlier I wanted to say is that I would hope we also want to protect visitors to our state who are partaking of any of the services while they're passing through, that they also have a confidence that we're protecting them. So I don't think the word matters so much as the protection. And I kind of like what Representative Brown was saying by adding without the burden of overregulation, and you put the over in there. But I also agree with you that if it's going to make it more partisan sounding and difficult for people to be able to understand the concept here, which the concept is that we want to protect the safety of the people, and lawful occupation means you follow the laws. It means you're not a murderer, a child rapist trying to go in and do some kind of
You're not
job.
doing something that's illegal. You're not selling heroin,
Exactly.
which is illegal.
Exactly. So the word lawful in there addresses that whole issue. I like taking fundamental out. I like what we've talked about, the whole constitutionality issue versus statute. So anyway, I'd like to move that we adopt this amended language if we can all agree to a simple thing. And I'm aware I have to leave in 15 minutes, and I'd like to help as much as I can.
And that's actually going to be a process issue. That we're spending more time, I'm not objecting, but we're spending more time on this than I expected. And we have even thornier issues to deal with.
I'm okay with it.
And
Another subcommittee rather than rushing through today?
right, I don't think it's an FN. Is this an early bill? I don't know. I'd have to check with Carol.
It is an FM, yeah.
But not all FNs are. She sent, I don't have it with me, she sent an email that listed all the bills in the subcommittees, and I think there was an asterisk by the ones that were early. Well, we don't need to decide this here, but yeah, the issue is timing. So we kind of agreed not to meet on Mondays, and at this point, I couldn't schedule one on Monday anyway, because I think the 24-hour notice doesn't count weekends, I'm not sure. So we couldn't adequately notice it, so we couldn't meet on Monday.
I can miss the delegation meeting, I think. This is important. I agree.
And,
I have another subcommittee that I have to.
and
be
in one
for
sense, I'd
1:30.
kind of like to have, Glenn here or a substitute before we really exact controversial stuff. So how about this? Let's go through this as far as we can. And, yeah. And you're going to leave. I don't know who else is going to leave, but I mean, we could, you're not on the subcommittee. I mean, the issue is quorum. No, you're welcome to stay. I'm just,
But I can't because I have a demo.
oh, when do you have to leave?
I have to be there at 2:00 in Dover, and that's an hour away. at
Okay,
least.
so, okay.
I'm good today till probably 2:30.
And I
Okay.
need to go before then because
But
I
some-
can't arrive 5 minutes.
I understand. How about this? Let's try and finish this one. And then what I'll do is, I've got stuff written up on the other two issues. I will hand them out to people. If we have, maybe discuss them a little bit, but then go off and think about it. And then I'll talk to Carol about when we can schedule a meeting to continue this.
Just for your information, Mr. Chair, I moved all my Monday appointments. So I
You-
will open it up for subcommittee possibly if I know
Right,
ahead.
but we
So,
can't do this next month.
No.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
talk to Carol
So
and send
just,
something on the schedule.
just so you know
But
that.
thank you
yeah,
for that. Thank
yeah.
you very much for that. So something brief from Representative Schmidt, if you.
Right. One of the things that needs to be said is that not every bill, Representative Brown, not every bill has a statement of purpose by any means. And it is actually frowned upon in many respects to do so because you see the wrestling that we're engaged in. And in my view, we have not at all dealt with this question of this fundamental rights situation. I think it would be much better to say, for example, at the same time the General Court recognizes that the interest of individuals to pursue lawful occupations is fundamental. It ain't a question of rights, folks, because not every individual has a right to do anything that's lawful. There are too many qualifications. So anyway, I think my language would be better than what you have, and you can't get over the problems that I alluded to about the word right. Anyway,
We'll have to disagree actually on that.
okay.
But
Anyway,
anyway.
I still think so it's not a right. You can have an interest.
I thought you thought it was better if or you wouldn't have brought it forward.
Okay.
I get it.
Okay.
So.
But also the commission, of course, can't remove anything. It can only propose.
Right, that's the other thing.
Right?
Right,
It,
right.
it can't do anything. It can only propose stuff.
So
Okay.
I'm completely fine with taking the word fundamental out. Director Courtney raised a good point on that. As far as consumer and citizen, I lean a little more to consumer, and the reason is, although I understand, is that the issue of people coming into the state, there's still going to be consumers here.
Would you?
I mean, yeah, if you have a suggestion.
I agree. Would you consider someone that lives in Massachusetts that has a license in New Hampshire working here a consumer? And if that's the case, then
Well,
it makes sense.
Well, if they're practicing in New Hampshire, they're working for some consumer in the state of New Hampshire, right? So,
I'm okay with
Still
the word.
included.
It's
But
fine.
you
So-
see
so-
you see the issue with statements of
I
purpose,
I
and
got it.
this
I
one
heard
is
that.
fundamentally
I heard that.
flawed.
I mean, you know,
Okay.
if everyone wants to remove it, we could. I thought on this one because there seemed to be some confusion about why we're doing this. Having something here, I thought would be of some value.
I'm not saying it isn't, but also I think the question of workability, which I addressed in my remarks to the committee
Yeah.
when the bill was heard, the idea that you're setting up a task for the commission to examine all the boards is unworkable in
That's
my
a separate
view.
question. We're not addressing that question right now, so please. Yes.
Mr. Chair, so the key point in this bill is to establish a commission to evaluate various occupational boards. Instead of saying establishing a sunset commission, evaluate the boards and assess the efficacy and
Uh,
why, my question is, why is sunsetting is the key
All right.
point.
I get that. So that's not in the statement of purpose, but if you want to, when we meet again, if you want to come forward with a different name for the commission, I'm certainly open to that, and we could change it wherever it's used. And I get the concern, because it seems to imply, I mean, this has been used in a number of other states. The idea is you set up the repeal and then the commission to review it, and it's to push the process. And so it's sunsetting, but it's only going to sunset if the commission wants it to, or doesn't say it should continue. But I get the concern and the message. So if you can think of something else you'd like to call it for next time?
Question
Certainly.
about, so each board, don't they have the evaluatory clause in their function to
Well-
say how efficient we are or not, to
The-
look
but-
themselves
But
in the
this is
mirror?
to look, I mean, also that got into the question we had last time on performance audits, like we had of the dental board. That's looking there, is the board operating efficiently under the current statute? Do the rules go along with the statute and all that? Has anything changed? Are they doing things that they shouldn't, for example? And that's good. But this is to step back and take a look at the whole structure, okay, of how we're regulating, this. And there's a number of ways of doing it, and what we're doing currently is certainly one way, and maybe the commission will decide that it's going to stay the same, maybe with some tweaks or not. But it's a matter of stepping back, because, if you're looking at like a performance audit, you're in the weeds saying, are they doing what the legislature told them to do, and are they doing it well? But this is stepping back and saying, should the legislature change somewhat what we're telling them to do, or how to regulate? So that's
Mr. Chair?
yeah,
Might I back up just a tad?
certainly.
So I think, Representative, that what you were trying to say is what the last sentence of the proposed statement of purpose does say.
Yeah,
Re-examine the licensing boards. You used a different word, but same idea.
yeah.
Re-examine the licensing boards to determine if the balance of those interests is being done. So I think that that's what you were getting at.
Correct.
And I think that this says this well. And if you want, while we still have a quorum, did we do if we didn't do a motion, I would motion we accept this statement of purpose as written with a change to the fundamental right, as you, if
If
you
somebody else
want to
would, if somebody else would like to second.
Yeah, but it's, if it can, would that, if we strike that,
Which,
the
Fundamental?
second line, fundamental
Right.
right?
That's what
well,
the chair
I
wanted
would, I
to
would
do.
strike
Yeah.
fundamental, I would leave in right, but it doesn't, it reduces.
Can
the
we
emphasis
just
on-
say individual to pursue a lawful occupation in the state and leave it at that, rather than saying it's
Well, okay,
individual?
that actually does say it. I mean, I might, at the same time, the general court will emphasize the right of an individual to pursue a lawful occupation is a fundamental. So it's saying right twice.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
you'd be
is-
okay to amend your motion, I'd be fine with.
Taking
with
the whole
is,
thing.
Is a fundamental right out and just
Yeah,
leave it at.
strike that.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
So you're gonna
Okay.
amend your motion?
yeah,
Amend my motion to end the sentence at occupation.
Right. And we'll
Is that
leave.
what you're saying, right?
Right.
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
and the purpose of this act is to require the legislator re-examining state to determine if the balance of those important interests is being done properly. Yeah. That, this commission, okay, purpose of this commission is to require, because the whole legislature is not looking at it. We are authorizing a commission to take a look at it.
Right, but they can only propose changes. In the end, the legislature will have to review any proposed changes, and they can modify them or get rid of them or whatever they want. The whole legislature wants.
Correct. But that is the purpose of the commission. The duty of a commission or the role of a commission is to just recommendation. That's already in the statute, correct?
Correct.
So commissions cannot propose language for law or change something.
They
The
could,
commission.
the commission can propose legislation to do anything,
To the legislature.
to the legislature, but they can't implement anything.
Correct.
All
So,
they do is issue a report.
yeah. So instead of saying the purpose of this act is to require the legislator, require the commission to
That's fine. If you want to change that,
because it's not the whole legislature is
okay,
not
I'm
doing
fine
it.
with that.
Okay.
Uh,
It-
uh,
Did you get it?
That's under the assumption that we will leave that it called a
Well,
commission.
we're calling, I think
could
it'll
have-
be
might have to
called a
change that.
commission. We might change the name of the commission,
okay.
but then
Correct.
just
I'm
using-
okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
Yep.
because a commission, the responsibility is to oversee,
I get
right?
that.
So, yeah,
That's fine. That makes sense.
yeah. And then I will change this whole thing, no sunset commission.
Well, that's
Right,
later.
that's a different question.
Okay.
So we are looking at statement of purpose.
Right.
Just that section.
And so I'll read what I think with these changes I've got. And so the protection of health and safety is of utmost importance to New Hampshire state government and the consumers of this state. At the same time, the general court recognizes the right of an individual to pursue a lawful occupation. The purpose of this act is to require the commission to re-examine the licensing boards of the state to determine if the balance of those important interests is being done properly and to suggest any improvements. So,
Oh, something where word popped up at this.
so
At the same time, the general court recognizes that the right of an individual to pursue a lawful occupation in the state.
well, our authorities in the state, we don't need to.
Okay.
I have great sympathy to the people drafting the Declaration of Independence at this point, but, so, which they went through the same process, I understand it from history, but which is fine. I mean, people need to be comfortable. So we have you're okay with that? Yes, that's your motion. So can we have a second? Second. All right, cool. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, nobody opposed? Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. And I apologize to drag everybody in there and not get any further than we did, but it is what it is. So what I'm going to do is talk to Representative McGuire, Chair McGuire, about scheduling and figure out where we go from here. For members of the subcommittee, I'm going to pass out a couple things, and one of them I have a change, but I don't, I've only penciled in one of them, so I'm going to have to tell you what it is. So one of these, the first one is, and I've got all this organized here, is actually to talk about the membership. So there are real problems with the membership that was proposed before this meeting. So I just need three folks. So one for you. Thank you. One for Representative Gould. All right. So I spoke with Chair McGuire this morning, and she suggested a change, one change, and that is, I'll quickly, so it's two members of the House of ED&A, one of whom shall be a minority, applied by the Speaker, one member of the House Commerce and Consumer Affairs, appointed by the Speaker, and often in law, I looked at other commissions in law, and usually if it's three legislators, it requires one be from the minority, so I added that. That was a good catch. Similarly, for the Senate, two members of the Senate EDA, one will be in the minority, and one member from Senate Commerce. And then a public member representing the interests of businesses in New Hampshire, appointed by the BIA. This is, okay. The Director Courtney or her designee, the executive director. And I had in there three members of the public appointed by the governor. Representative McGuire's suggestion is to drop that to two and add one public member representing healthcare employers appointed by the governor. And that leaves it an odd number. It's 11, which is, I think, it tends to be a good number for a commission. It meets the statutory requirement. It can't be more than 15. There's a statutory requirement. Legislators have to be the majority, which they are, 6 out of 11. And then for the public member, it's got the usual language. They can't be a licensee or involved in licensing. They have to represent the public, basically consumers.
What did you say about, sorry, I
Right. Sorry.
changed this to 2?
Two, and then underneath, one public member representing healthcare employers appointed by the governor and council, you know.
I like this change. One of the things that I was looking at the original one was that governor gets to do 2 members, and
Yeah.
again, governor gets to do
I mean, I
3
have to
public
say,
members.
you know,
So
I did get this bill, well, I'm very interested in this, and I've thought of this idea for some years, and I support it. I got the actual language from the governor's office, and the charge of the commission, the duties of the commission, I looked at very carefully and had some changes for. I admit I did not carefully review the members, which I should have, and no, I don't agree with what was there. So, you know, that was not, yeah, you know, as much I like or don't like the governor, I didn't want to give him too much power on this. Not my intent, sorry.
So,
We have had our differences, but
I would make a motion to accept Chairman
yeah,
Lekis's changes.
someone like to speak on this?
Second,
Wait, yeah, okay, we've got the motion
Yep.
second, but sorry, we're not trying to. And actually, yeah, if somebody has suggestions on this, I apologize for not doing that first.
I know
Definitely
you're trying to
open
move it along. Steve Rancourt, from Pelham, New Hampshire. We just feel it's a little bit possibly unfair with that makeup. The governor's already appointing 2 at the beginning, and you've
No,
appointed.
let me read through this. We completely replaced that. The language in the bill is gone if we do this. So it would be 3 members from the House, 2 members from ED&A, one of whom from the minority party, and then 1 member of the House from, oh, great, Commerce, okay? And so that's 3 members of the legislature, 2 from ED&A, 1 from Commerce, and 1 of the EDA ones have to be from the minority party. And same thing for the Senate, 3 senators, 2 from ED&A, 1 have to be from the minority, 1 from Commerce. And then a public member representing the interests of business in New Hampshire appointed by the BIA. And that's in, this kind of language is in other commissions. I actually went back and looked at a number of them. And then, you know, the executive director of OPLC or designee. And then what's written there, but the intent is to change it. It says 3 members of the public appointed by the governor. That would be changed to 2 members, just general members appointed by the governor. Although there's language down below saying the public members, you know, can't have a direct interest in licensing. I mean, they're to represent basically the consumers. And then add on to it 1 public member representing a healthcare employer and appointed by the governor. I was thinking about having the appointment be by the hospital association, but talking with Chair McGuire, the problem is there are a number of other interests in healthcare employers, not just the hospitals. And while the governor would do the appointment, it's got to be somebody representing a healthcare employer. So BIA is just general, all kinds of employers. But since a lot of the boards deal with healthcare stuff, she felt, and I agree, that there should be somebody there who has more knowledge from the healthcare employer side of the fence.
So that reduces the governor's appointments from 5 to 3.
Right, and one of them is constrained in that they have to be representing a healthcare employer.
It just feels like we're doing the healthcare side of it, but forgetting the professional side. They're pretty even the amount of boards. I don't know if they're trying to use the BIAs to
Yeah,
consider the
that's the
professional
idea.
side.
I mean, the intent, as I said during the public hearing, licensing is not for the people licensed at all. I mean, it hopefully will have some positive benefits to encourage, you know, education, further development and all that. And maybe there's some prestige or trust. That's good. But the legitimate purpose for licensing is to protect public health and safety. So anyway, that's
If I may, sir?
certainly, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I hear what you just said. So in here we have electricians, electrology, genetic counselors, midwifery,
We got everything,
naturopathic,
yeah.
many, well, those are healthcare, some of them, but many that
And
aren't
all the
healthcare.
doctors. And we have
Professions,
many that aren't.
engineers, architects, all of them. I
Right.
just feel that there should be some balance. If we're going to represent the healthcare industry, even though they're not licensed, there should be one for
Well,
the non-professional.
we're looking for one person. The commissions don't work if they're too big, and there's actually statutory limitations on the size.
Mr. Chair.
Could we, oh,
So,
sorry.
My question would be, is there another organization besides the BIA
Yeah,
that
maybe
would
there's somebody
better
better, but there's nothing I'm.
better
aware of.
be able to appoint the
There's a
business
couple
side?
other, building associations that are who probably more represent the professional side than the BIA. You know what I mean? ABC, AGC, things like that, that might, if you're gonna appoint it to
Well,
something like that.
Again, and this is no disrespect to anybody or their trade or their license, but it's not, the intent isn't to represent the people who are licensed. It's the people who are who
there's a
make use of them. And business and industry, as well as individual consumers do, as well as healthcare employers. So that's why those two were in there. Now, maybe there's some organization that's more representative of businesses in general as they use,
Because
higher-
those aren't licensed, the AGC, ABC, construction, general contractors, they're not licensed, so it's not a licensed individual on there, and it would represent the business industry
Right,
better, I think.
but the issue I have, I'll get to you in just a moment. The issue I have is that we can't make it too big. Really, there's room for one. One was healthcare, because they're like, a lot of the licensees are healthcare, probably in numbers, probably, especially with nursing, the majority.
So just maybe consider changing the BIA to something else, leave it like
Well,
it is.
I'm,
but
I'm open to suggestions on that. And Representative Gould?
Yeah, yes. So in supporting that, I think that your second line says, at the same time, the general court recognizes the right of an individual to pursue a lawful occupation. So we know that as much as the primary goal is protecting the safety of the citizens and the state, and that licensing is really important, we also, there's no way to know whether there's a balance if we don't have the right agencies. And we've heard over and over, D. Juris has come in and other members of the governor's office to talk about some of the problems with the appointment process through the governor's office and the problems the public has of getting a hold of them. So I really like what you've done by picking an organization. I think we need to work on the right organization for the professionals and for the hospital person. I want to challenge that there is a medical profession that can do a direct appointment. When we have commissions and committees where appointments are done outside the governor's office, it's much easier for the professionals and the public to access and get their appointments done than it is if we get bottlenecked in the thousands and thousands and thousands
So,
of appointments the governor's
If-
office is
if-
doing.
I mean, if you can come up with maybe an organization that represents healthcare organizations that's maybe broader than the hospital association, that'd be great. And that would pull it completely out of the governor's hands, which I'm okay with. Representative Montecuti.
Yeah, the couple of comments. I do, to stakeholders, not just the consumers and the providers, but the industry experts is also necessary. I understand your intent of healthcare, because there's a large portion of it, and that really affects the safety and well-being. Same time, like the engineering, professions, which is not healthcare, that should also be represented. But I do appreciate the fact that not all the eggs are in one basket, that everything comes from the governor's office. That was taken away. So, and maybe the restriction or suggestion to the governor's office can be given to appoint the two appointees that they get, be from different professions. So,
Right. Well, no, it explicitly says the public members may not hold a license or have a spouse who holds a license or has a financial interest in a business in a licensed profession. If you look at the paragraph under the bullets.
Which is pretty
And that's-
standard for most
That's
public
standard
members.
for
but-
public members. I mean, that you look at any one of the board makeups for any of the boards, I took that language from, I think, one of the other boards.
I have to challenge that thing, just like, the legislation is a volunteer legislation, and you can't, we can't say, oh, you can't, if you're working in the healthcare profession, you can't bring any bills in the healthcare. That, it's a lot of volunteers that want to work. So when you say general public without you know, you're kind of excluding the large portion. So are you looking at just people who have retired or who are
No, I mean,
emerging and not the consumers?
the-
If they hold license in some part, they're general public. I might hold license in
I-
healthcare, but I might be appointed for different, not as a
I
healthcare.
understand. But,
If I may, Mr. Chair,
yeah,
just,
sure.
if you're having this commission and they're gonna determine whether or not they should sunset or whatever they're gonna do to this thing, and on this list, there's still nobody that has any professional experience to give to,
So,
insight to it, so
I
that's
was
the
going
only
to address
concern.
that. And so, I'll ask a facetious question, which is, do you believe that, that nobody in any of the licensed professions or their representatives are going to show up and provide information to the commission? I mean, the intent is not to put everybody who might have expertise that's important to the commission on the commission. I mean, that'd be impossible. So the idea is the commission is, legislators who are representatives of the people in general, and a member from OPLC that kind of have to be there. They're involved in all of it. And then, so the idea then was, and have public members who aren't licensed, who are there to represent the general public. And then it's kind of, and then who else, not the licensees, but who else who are in effect consumers? And the thought was that you have, there's a lot of businesses, both healthcare is one set, and then everybody else, who hire a lot of licensed people. And so they, having some representative on there from those groups, would make sense. But, they're going to have like any commission, they have public hearings, they take input, written input, public hearings, public meetings, the whole deal, like any commission. And the whole process is public. And then they come out with a recommendation. But then that goes to the legislature and through the whole legislative process.
And I understand, I appreciate, Mr. Chair, but if you take in this committee and you say to them, what's the institutional knowledge that's gonna help them make some of these decisions, where is that in
I'm
any of
not
these
looking for it to
positions?
be on the commission. I'm looking to the people who come before the commission to provide it.
Mr.
And
Chair?
that's true. You look at this makeup of a lot of the commissions we have on a wide range of subjects. And that's generally what's there. They're not trying to put the people with the institutional knowledge on the commission.
May I, sir?
Certainly, yeah.
The intent of that to remain impartial.
Well,
I very much agree with what this gentleman is saying here in philosophy. There should be someone on this commission that has a clue about the industry, I would think.
Should probably say the professional and occupational side should have one appointment, the governor should have a third one for whatever he wants, and that would be balanced. It doesn't have to be a licensed person, whatever, but from that side of it, somebody representing the occupational, somebody representing the professional. You need some sort of institutional knowledge, and I understand the public meetings, but you know how hard it is and how much money it costs us to come to these? It costs me $1,000 a day every time I come here for not working, my guy not working, lost job. So it's not easy to follow every one of them, especially the amount that's going on now. So while that's available, it's very hard to stay on top of it. At least if somebody's there, they're watching out and giving that input so they understand how this would affect either one of those.
but-
That's all.
and also, I mean, we have people in these meetings on licensing regularly who have orange badges, who I assume are hired to represent the interests of the various group of licenses. And I am sure that there's going to be, some of them present who would be doing that. That's my take on it.
Mr. Chair?
Follow
Yeah,
up.
all right.
Sorry.
You follow up
Sorry.
and then.
But and I also agree with I'm agreeing with both sides, which isn't helpful probably, but the impartiality of a commission is also a good thing. Could we, without increasing the size of this commission, could we take your last bullet, which is now 2 members, and maybe make one of those appointed by the governor from an association, not association, but a group not associated with healthcare, or we give the BIA 2, although you didn't think the
So,
BIA.
let me make a large,
So
we're
go
not
ahead.
going to take a vote on this today, okay? I brought this out to people to get this kind of discussion going, to get people thinking about it. And then when we meet again, so, if people have specific, and I'm not wedded to this membership, okay? There's certain principles on it, that I mean, I don't want, somebody from each one of the licensed professions on here or something, but if there's a better way to make, and we have to have, the majority of them have to be legislators, and we can't have more than 15 unless we want to override the statute. So I'm just putting this out, and there's other things to discuss in this, which with lunch hour coming and people having commitments, we're not going to get to. So this is just to put it out there so it's not sprung unexpectedly on people. Certainly.
My one little thing was the 2 public members appointed by the governor, we dropped it from 3 to 2. In my experience, those would be the ones who would represent the general consumer and shouldn't be licensed or
Right.
have any conflict. But the business industry person and the public health person, you would want, of course, licensed professionals who understand the profession. And exactly for the reason the gentleman said, I was most moved in one of the last hearings by the fact that our boards and commissions are volunteers, and that when we're combining them all, we're wasting people's time if they have to deal with unrelated matters. So the respecting their time, I think, is an important factor. And thank you, sir, for bringing that up.
I agree entirely, and while I'm not going to prejudge what we're going to do with the bill we heard then, I will say that, at least the land survey and the engineer merge seem, well, we'll get to it, but I'm not pushing for that. Let's put it that way. Okay, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, with this, I mean, the intent is predominantly the responsibility is put on the legislators to look at it, take a hard look at what we have on the books right now and make any suggestions. So I see your intent of 6 of the 11 so far would be legislators, and then the others are outside the legislation, legislators. So I see that, but it's also, are we going to put a time frame for the commission to work? Because one of the things we have a lot of commissions, but there is no end date. Everything starts and so
let me get
this
to
one
that.
has to be a short
Yeah, so.
sunset for the
so
commission.
The third
not for
thing
the
I was going to
boards.
hand out relates to that.
Okay.
And I don't think we're going to be able to debate this, and I think this is going to be a long one. I'm just handing out for people to think about. But in general terms, and there may need to be some tweaking, what it would say is that if the commission, the commission's required to issue a report on each one of these boards, and the requirement in here is they issue it at least a year before the repeal date. I'd like to leave the repeals in general in there, but to loosen this up. So what the change that I'm proposing is to say, if the commission does not issue their report by the date required by the bill, by statute, if it went through, then the repeal date for that board, for which did get a report, is extended by a year. So, I mean, and there may be other ways to deal
That's
with
a
it.
whole different
But
discussion.
right.
I'm not going to get into
But
that.
what I'm saying is, I recognize the concern. I mean, I don't personally, it's my opinion, I don't think it's realistic that the commission's not going to do anything, and then nobody's going to put in a bill to repeal the repeal, okay? I mean, in my view personally, no disrespect to anybody's different view, I think that's fantasy, but I could be wrong, I recognize that. But, so I'm trying to deal with that, but still have something that at least in some sense puts pressure on the commission to actually do something, which is my fear.
I think, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I mean, with all due respect,
Yeah.
I do think your presumption is that commission is not going to do it. So we have to build the safeguard. I would like to take the opposite view of saying we are coming together as legislators to say there's a commission, we want you to take a hard look, and this is a volunteer commission, and instead of just throwing everything at them and get rid of all these 57 boards, 165 boards, or repeal it or keep it, let's say, hey, look at it on a general purpose and making it more manageable and expectation realistic expectation of the commission.
So my response would be, this is spread out over a number of years. I mean, what I did not want is to say, oh, look at all the boards and you got a year or two to do it. I mean, that is unworkable. And I agree. So it's spread over quite a number of years and a piece at a time. So my intent was that would help with that. As far as commissions doing things or not doing things, I hope for the best. And I think, everybody intends to do the right thing, but people have competing things for time and interest and all that. And unfortunately, if you look at the history of commissions, some have been great and some not so much. They haven't done a whole lot. And you can talk to Tom Dolan, his committee's been reviewing them. So, it's like, trust they're going to do the right thing, but try and add some pressure. That's what
And I would just add quickly, one of my thoughts is, why can't these tasks be given to Tom Dolan's committee? They've already looked
they have a very different charge. Their charge is to look at the existing commissions and evaluate whether it's worthwhile in committees to keep them. This is looking at something very different, which is how we're handling regulation of professions in order to protect the public health and safety. They're completely different in my view.
The commissions are very different, like the veterans. No, they're not licensing
They're also reviewing committees. They're committees.
committees and commissions, and not licensing boards.
And my understanding of the difference is distinction. Committees are all legislators. Commissions can have non-legislator members. That's the thing. I think that's in statute. We look, but yeah.
But I hear the difference on the license.
Mr. Chair, if you put that in place the 1 year, what happens if by some chance, just looking forward to adjusting her concerns, after that 1 year, they still doing it? Would it continue?
Yeah,
To
and so I
extend
mean,
it?
it's a weaker thing. I'd prefer leaving the repeals in with a fixed date, but I understand that generates a lot of concern, and there's some legitimate issues there. I get it. So yes, if the commission never met, and basically the repeal dates would move out a year at a time on all the boards until a committee like Tom Dolan said, this thing isn't working, kill it.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I don't think you read, maybe you did, the following sentence.
Actually, sorry.
But
I
to
was
this
in the middle of
gentleman's,
getting out when this thing got going.
to this gentleman's point, it's,
I really don't want to spend too much time on this there because I want to respect people's time and let
Yeah.
them go.
it says no board may be repealed without the Sunset Commission delivering a report on it.
Yes.
That's the following sentence, which he didn't
Right,
read.
right. And what I would say is that first paragraph implies the second, but I added that line there just to make it absolutely clear what the situation was. That's the deal on that. So I'm going to close the,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
sure.
Well, how do we get this information to people that are interested in it?
I would say, what I would like to do is not do that. That for this thing, if you have suggestions, we can think about them, bring them to the subcommittee meeting, because what comes out of it may be very different than what I wrote up. Okay, I'm not claiming that I'm going to speak for the subcommittee or the whole committee. That's the deal.
I agree with you. Before we, as a subcommittee, decide on something, it's not prudent to hand out anything because that could go wild. Thank you.
All right, because we may go a very different direction, probably will, and that would leave something out there that would assume that we want to do whatever we aren't doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, I'm closing the subcommittee work session on House Bill 1676. Thanks for everybody for being here. Sorry that it maybe didn't get as much done as might have been hoped, but it's a tough thing. I mean, I'm not criticizing anybody at all, because it's,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for doing that.
yeah. I looked at the list of bills on this one, I'm like, ah.
Look at 424